It's Timothy. Where is he? So good to see you here. Thank you so much. Timothy will ignite the first positive flame. Is it, yeah, there it is. Wow. You can hand over the torch to me. You're just standing here. Just join with the group. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So, what a beautiful... What a very special moment to join this together. Thank you, Timothy, for joining us and lighting the very first positive flame.
Thank you for inviting me.
We traditionally start the power of love with a commemoration. We commemorate people with HIV and AIDS who died. And we also commemorate the deceased who have done their best for people living with HIV and AIDS. Let's show our respect for them. If you can, please stand up. We'll show pictures of the deceased who lived in the Netherlands, but we commemorate the deceased from all over the globe while listening to Fragile.
Blood will flow when flesh and steel are one, drying in the colors of the evening sun. Tomorrow's rain will wash the stains away, but something in our minds will always stay. Perhaps this final act was meant to clinch a lifetime's argument, that nothing comes from violence and nothing ever could. For all those born beneath an angry star, lest we forget how fragile we are. On and on the rain will fall, like tears from a star, like tears from a star. On and on the rain will say how fragile we are, how fragile we are. Oh, 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 oh. start, like change from the start. On and on, the rain will say how fragile we are, how fragile we are, how fragile we are, how fragile we are.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Perry, and the musicians. We are going to the here and now with the song Something Inside So Strong. And we had a rehearsal with the torchbearers as our choir. They didn't know beforehand. We had a rehearsal at the beginning of the afternoon. But for me, it feels like ages ago after our Positive Flame tour. But we had a rehearsal in the Global Village in the Rai, and we're going to perform it now. Something Inside So Strong.
The higher you build your barriers, the taller I become. The further you take my rights away, the faster I will run. You can't deny me, you can't decide to turn your face away, no matter, 'cause there's something inside so strong. I know that I can make it, though you're doing me wrong, so wrong. You thought that my pride was gone. Oh no, there's something inside so strong. Something inside so strong. The more you refuse to hear my voice, the louder I will sing. You hide behind walls of Jericho. Your lies will come tumbling. Deny my place in time. You squander wealth that's mine. My light will shine so brightly. It will blind you because there's, something inside so strong. I know that I can make it, though you're doing me wrong, so wrong. You thought that my pride was gone. Oh no, something inside so strong. Something inside so strong. Brothers and sisters, when they insist that you're not good enough. Oh, well, we know better. something inside so strong. Come on. I know that I can make it, though you're doing me wrong, so wrong. You thought that my pride was gone. Oh no. Something inside so strong. Something inside so strong. Something inside so strong.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Perry Dossett, singer, and my love. Thank you, pianist Louise van der Sande Bakhuizen and bass player Bill Mokoek. And a big thank you, a really big thank you, for all the torchbearers today. Woo. Thank you. We have a present for everybody on stage, all the torchbearers and all the artists tonight. A beautiful red heart, and you can see a red ribbon in it. So I would like to give this special one, Françoise, to you. Thank you so much for your cooperation. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. And now it's time for you to relax. Thank you. And we're gonna watch a short movie.
Living with HIV in the Netherlands. Just look at the diversity. There are people who've been living with HIV since the 1980s, and people who've only just started living with HIV. There are people who were born with HIV, and people who acquired HIV during the course of their life. There are people originally from the Netherlands, and people who were born in another country. There are Dutch celebrities who are open about their HIV, and normal Dutch people who are open. But many share their HIV with almost no one. There are people who are committed to helping their community. There are opportunities to meet up, there's a beautiful magazine, and there's an inspiring annual and informative theatre event.
Welkom op de leukste dag van het jaar om HIV te hebben.
The difficult side to living with HIV in the Netherlands? It's not the illness itself or its treatment. Many people take one or just a few pills a day. And if you do experience a side effect, you can almost always switch. Family doctors, HIV nurses, pharmacists and pharmaceutical companies strive to ensure good quality HIV treatment and care. And it's all covered by the healthcare insurance to which everyone in the Netherlands is entitled. HIV doctors and nurses don't make a big thing of HIV. They know all about it and enjoy interacting with their HIV patients. Children and teenagers with HIV receive specialized care. We're open-minded about HIV, sex workers, men who have sex with men, and drug use. The hardest thing about living with HIV in the Netherlands? It's the reactions you may get. Although many are positive, those few negative reactions can stay with you for the rest of your life. A boy who isn't allowed to tell his classmates he has HIV. Your mother kicks you out. Dating becomes complicated. People with HIV in the Netherlands learn to deal with it through self-awareness. The royal family have shown their commitment, as have other prominent public figures. Each year, there are fewer new HIV infections in the Netherlands, but many people are late in finding out. Numerous organizations are working to achieve a future with no new HIV infections. There are doctors and researchers who've played an important role since the beginning, and doctors and researchers who are playing an important role in the future. HIV in the Netherlands stands for overcoming setbacks, alone, but more often together. HIV in the Netherlands, stronger together.
Stronger together. Thank you. And now it's time to hear your voice. So I would like to ask you to take your smartphone and go to the Wi-Fi of this theater, DeLaMar, and go to menti.com so we can hear your voices. And then we have several questions so we can see who you are, what we are doing tonight. The first question is, which country do you live in? Yeah, we have the time. No, we wait. Oh, we have to go back to the... Oh, no, it's above, menti.com, and use the code 882224. We just wait till people give a Belgium, the Netherlands, China, Austria, Canada, USA. That's a lot of people from the Netherlands, but South Africa, United States, Ireland. I lost the count already. United Kingdom, USA, the Netherlands, South Africa, USA. That's a nice mixture of the audience. I think we can go to the second. No, we can't go to the second. Switzerland. I would like to go to the second question, and that is, what do you think about the positive flame? Cool. Well, it's rather hot. Tof, great, mooi, super, beautiful, amazing, awesome. Inspiring, positive, cool, sexy, impressive, fantastic. Well, that's good feedback to hear. It's inspiring and it's moving. Great idea. Okay, good, inspiring. I'm not sure, hey? Great. I don't know how to pronounce the icons. Amazing getting together. Outstanding. Hotter than hot. Indeed. Indeed, it was hotter than hot. The next question is a personal question, but it's anonymous. What is applicable? I have HIV, I don't have HIV, or I don't know. That's, well, kind of half-half. People with HIV, people who don't have HIV, and several people who don't know. The next questions are only for people who are living with HIV. And then the first is, how many HIV pills do you take a day? That's a lot of people taking 1 pill a day. 2 pills a day is rather common as well. 3 pills a day. The next question, all the further questions are for people living with HIV. Is your viral load undetectable? Five people, 7 people, not undetectable, and a wonderful majority undetectable. Yeah, that's indeed worth an applause. Then we have a statement. I'm 100% sure that I can transmit HIV when my viral load is undetectable and I'm taking my HIV medicine properly. A lot of people totally agree, and a few people agree somewhat, and a few people disagree. The next question is related to Timothy Brown. There will be a cure for HIV in my lifetime. What do you think? I see the doubts. There will be a cure for HIV in my lifetime. A lot of agree totally, several, no, also a lot of agree somewhat, and people who disagree. The next one, in a few years' times, almost nobody will be taking HIV pills, but will get an HIV shot twice a year. And HIV pills by injection. A lot of somewhat agrees, and for the rest, a mixture. All these subjects will be covered in the medical update, which we'll have in a few minutes. The next question requires some explanation. Up to now, HIV treatment has consisted of a combination of 3 or more drugs, medicines. There is now a new pill that provides a treatment that consists of only 2 HIV medications. And our statement is Mary uses HIV medication and smokes. How can Mary achieve the best health benefits? Switching from triple to dual therapy or stop smoking? Well, this is a very clear answer. Stop smoking is the best advice. And the last question for you is, I have side effects from my HIV medication at the moment. No, I suspect maybe, or yes. A lot of no's, a few suspects, and a few yeses. This is good input for our medical update from the news of AIDS 2018, hot from the press. The most important development that have been presented at the conference will be on our agenda. 3 caregivers will participate in the conference on our behalf and clue us in. Please, your applause for Wilma, Elian, and Casper. Welcome on stage. Take a seat. Take a seat. Welcome on stage.
Hi.
Good to see you here. I can sit here. Yeah. So, good to see you here. And in the preparation of this medical update, we were supported by the HIV-vereniging and the Association of HIV Nurses. Casper, UNH formulated an ambitious target, 90-90-90, 90% diagnosed, 90% on treatment, 90% viral load undetectable. How is it going in the Netherlands and how is it going in the rest of the world?
So I think that it's an ambitious goal. It's one of the sustainable development goals set out by the UNH. And in the Netherlands, it's improving, and we're getting there. But it has taken a lot of effort for a lot of people from the community and all care professionals, and of course all the people living with HIV to come to that place. So right now, I looked at the latest results, and we know that there are 89 percent of people who live with HIV have been diagnosed, and of those people, over 90% are on treatment, and of those people, over 90% are actually suppressed.
So
that
the Netherlands is really on track. Yeah.
Yeah. We shouldn't stop there. We shouldn't think that we are there yet, because in my opinion, HIV doesn't stop at borders. That's clear from this conference. And if you look at other parts in the world, if we're in Western Europe, we're still far from that aim. So only with support of all people, also the people who are here in the audience, can this goal be achieved on a global scale.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Maybe to add one thing of it, in this cascade, it's not only the people who have HIV, but there's also the people who are at risk of getting HIV. And I want to make a statement here as well that as long as there are governments in this world who reject that HIV exists, or that people with certain sexual preferences exist, or reject to reimburse PrEP, then we can never get to the 0% of new infections and never get to the 100%, the 100 that we need to come to globally.
Okay, that's a strong statement. Yeah. Wilma, I've heard there's a fourth 90. Can you tell us about it?
I read my answer because my English is not so very good, and I think you deserve a good answer and not a coherent answer. And I won't forget anything. So, Fred, the 940, the 490, sorry, that's bringing the quality of life into the discussion. This evening, I was in the workshop, and they want to search for that fourth quality of life, for the fourth cascade of care. Because why it's so important? When we achieved the 90-90-90, we can think we laid back and that's done. We achieved our goal. But it's more than that. HIV is more than a physical thing. It's not only about suppressed virus. It's also going about mental and social issues. In the workshop, the message was that quality of life is different for everybody. Each country or region or city or people has an own definition. So talking about quality of life, it has to be with the people living with HIV. We can't talk about it without them. So nothing about them, only with them. So for some people, quality of life is good health. For other people, it is out of stigma. It is out of discrimination. A lot of people are banished from family, are lost of love. And all the problems can has influence on the mental health. So we have to, and mental health can also cause barriers for the adherence of medication. So I think, Fred, the fourth 90 deserves a place in the continuum of cascade of care.
Okay, good, yeah. Well, that's getting support. Elian, we had questions here about the dual therapy and about injection, a monthly injection. Can you tell us about the new treatments that are discussed at AIDS 2018?
Yes, I can. And first is one of the things that when you visit a conference, and we have been to many in the last years, all the time you think, well, HIV medication is now really good. And can it get any better? But all the time, and also at this conference at AIDS 2018, there are new research showing that it can even be better. And this is, of course, one of the things which is important for everybody living with HIV to find out about it. And there are a couple of things that are new in the field of the treatment. And one of the things is, the discussion is, we have always had sort of the holy three, that you need 3 drugs to really suppress the virus for a long time. And taking drugs, even if it's put into one pill, it is some burden maybe to your body. So if you can do with less, it would be good. But often we found out if we tried, it didn't really work out. But this time there was a study presented, it's called the Gemini study, and it's a big study in about 700 people that were starting new on HIV medication, so they had high virus load in their blood. About 700 started with the normal 3 drugs, and the others started with only dolutegravir and lamivudine, so only 2 HIV drugs. And at the end, after 2 years, it was found that those 2 groups were treated equally good. And of course, you're still on drugs, but it showed that, for example, small risks of maybe renal problem, bone problem, these risks are small and not very severe, but they are there. And if we have to wait until the cure, then it's good that we can wait with the drugs that are less toxic. So this is a very important thing that we found out. One of the things we also find out, unfortunately, was that we hoped that maybe we could even do with only one of the new drugs, the integrase inhibitor. So 2 studies were done, already one in the Netherlands, and now also one was presented from France. And when you take only dolutegravir, even when you're well suppressed for years and your virus is undetectable, if you take only one drug, a very small group, but a small group gets virus back. So that is, we're not yet there.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the injectables, that is one of the things, of course, which is very new. There are, especially in this conference, there is a drug which I think will coming for all of us available soon. And it's a combination also of only 2 HIV drugs. And it can be injected, and it was tested now. One of the studies that were presented was that you can have it every 4 weeks or even every 8 weeks. And this is still a small study, but one of the things that showed that it worked well. And what was very important, this study actually asked people, how do you rate your HIV treatment? Do you think it's good or better? Or, and that was compared for people taking pills and people taking the injections. And even though some people said they had some pain in the side injections, they felt they had much better HIV treatments, that they were more happy with it. So these injectables, they will give further improvement to our choices and possibilities for HIV treatment. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Wilma, your clinic participated in the partner study. What did this study learn us?
The partner study. A short answer is 0 risk, 0 transmission when your virus is undetectable. A longer answer. In 2008, many of you heard about the Swiss statement. It was a revolution that time, and it says that when you are undetectable, your virus, you can't transmit the virus. But it was a small study and with small evidence. So 1 year later, in 2009, a group of researchers started a new study. That was the partner study. And it was rolled out in 14 countries in Europe. And 75 clinics did, with the partner study, they rolled in. And they were looking for couples, heterosexual couples and homosexual couples, who had, one of them had HIV, the other one has not HIV, and they had to have sex without condom. They come twice a year. The couples came twice a year to the clinic for testing and also for the questionnaires. And they told us a lot about their life, about the risk they had. And it was confidential, so they could tell a lot. In 8 years, all that couples had 77,000 times sex with each other. 77,000. So, and the research. The researchers, they did really their best, and they looked so hard, but they found any transmission. So, with this evidence, we will come out with U equal U. U is undetectable equal untransmissible. And this is an evolution because it means when you think about you equal you, it means liberation, it means freedom. For a lot of people, there is a burden, or not a burden, but a very heavy, how do you call it? Even kijken hoor, hoe heb ik het opgeschreven? No, yeah, also stigma, but the massive weight on the shoulders, it's going away. For heterosexual couples, it can mean that they can have children in a natural way. So it's very important. And so one thing, when you are effective on treatment, you can't pass on the virus, and that's a very, very important message.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Thank you. Eliane, can you tell us one important thing about the developments around pregnancy?
Yes, well, I think one of the most important things we just heard is that it's really important that now when you are HIV positive and if you have a partner that's HIV negative, you can just go ahead and try to become pregnant like we all can, which is really very important because it takes things back to normal. So that is one of the very important things. But then once you are pregnant, there are important things to think of because when you are HIV positive and not on treatment, there is a risk of transmitting the HIV virus to your baby. But we know that when the mothers are put on HIV treatment very early, that the risk becomes really, really low. And then we're talking about less than 1%. And this depends a little bit on how early you start HIV medication so that your virus is low. And one of the new things that we find out is that especially there was a lot of information about a large study that is done in Botswana in Africa. And they studied how HIV-positive pregnant women, how the outcome was for the babies in their health and HIV. And there are 25% of all women coming in to clinics because of their pregnancy, they're HIV positive. So that is a lot of women. And they've been studying how these women are doing. And most of these women, when they are on HIV medication, mostly efavirenz, they found out in about 20,000 women that their children that were born were healthy. And that there were no more added risk of getting children with handicaps or problems. And so that taking HIV medication during the pregnancy not only makes the risk that you transmit extremely low, but it's also getting healthy. It is safe. These treatments were safe. But in these studies now, we have new HIV medication coming on. I was already telling something about the integrase inhibitors. And the dolutegravir is one that is starting to use as first-line drug because it is quite easy, it has little side effects, it's very effective. So it's introduced also in women of childbearing age. And one of the worrying things where we talked about yesterday in the conference is that when you are on this drug and when you get pregnant on the HIV medication, then you have medication while the baby is still developing. And these crucial weeks, they're very delicate. And one of the things that came out is that was a bit worrying that in about 400 women that were taking this dolutegravir before they got pregnant, that out of 426, 4 children were born with deficits of the neuralgic tube. Which means in Dutch an open ruggetje, for example, but it is a very severe thing which usually doesn't, they die. So that's about, it's a small percentage, but it's still 1 in 100. While normally, for example, on efavirenz, on other drugs, this would be about 1 in 1,000 babies. So it's a lot higher, but it's small numbers, and we do not know yet what this really means. And this is one of the difficult things because for example, the World Health Organization, we try to make guidelines. What if people come to us and tell us, okay, I want to be pregnant, or I'm a woman, I don't want to be pregnant. What type of HIV medication do I get? And often they will say, okay, your first-line drug is efavirenz now because maybe dolutegravir is not safe. But we know that on dolutegravir, much more women are able to really suppress their virus well. They have less side effects, so they do better. And now we have this difficult discussion. Are we going to tell women, oh, you cannot have a better HIV treatment because you might get pregnant in the future? So these things really ask for individual individual treatment and that you're really able to talk to your patient well and explain these things. But the very, very good thing is one of the things we also find is the PROMISE study. And the PROMISE study showed us that overall, when you look at in South Africa, in mothers that have HIV, that the risk that their baby gets HIV, even later on when they are born and give breastfeeding, that the overall risk of transmitting is very low. It's only about 0.7% of babies getting infected. So that is less than, less than 7 in 1,000 babies. So that is very low, and that is a very promising result. So we know that putting the women on HIV medication during breastfeeding or giving the baby some HIV medication really, even when you give breastfeeding, reduces the risks. And that is one of the things we also, of course, wonder about the USU. When there is no virus in the blood of the mother, why cannot we give breastfeeding to our babies? Because that's actually the thing we all, breastfeeding is the best there is if you have a choice. So why is that also not, are we already certain that this is safe? And actually, unfortunately, those data are not yet there. From the study, we find out that the risk is very low. So if your virus in the blood is undetectable, usually the virus in the breast milk is undetectable, but not always. But even when the virus in the breast milk is undetectable, there were just 2 or 3 mothers that transmitted the virus to their baby. So we're not 100% sure if this is safe. Of course, this is also related to did they take their medication well, but this is not yet. I hope we will be there because this is very important. But for now, the good news is the risk is really low. And so if you don't have access to good and safe feeding, to water without infections, baby have a better life expectancy with breastfeeding also when you're HIV positive.
That's great. Yeah, that's great news. Yeah. Going to the cure. Because for the prospect of a cure is very important for almost all people living with HIV. Can you bring us up to speed?
Yes, I can. There are a lot of initiatives on cure, also here in the Netherlands, and we heard a few on the conference as well. I think one of the highlights was the RIVER trial, which is a study done in England. It was a randomized study, so this means that people couldn't choose to get a certain intervention, but they randomly got the intervention or not. And the whole idea was to eradicate the hiding place of HIV, which is called the reservoir. If you can do something about this reservoir and it is gone, then the idea is that you can stop your treatment. And the intervention in this study was to give the people who a certain drug that can get the HIV out of the hiding place. And if HIV does that, then it exposes itself to your own immune system. And the idea is that your own immune system will then target and kill this cell. This is the concept of shock and kill or kick and kill. In this study, 30 patients got this treatment, and also they got a boosting of their immune system with the vaccination. So they didn't find a cure there, but they did find a signal that the vaccination led to an increase in the host immunity that could target the HIV-infected reservoir cells. So the interest in I talked to one of the researchers. She's told me that they were doing additional research on the effects they observed and whether it can help to shape further studies aimed at a cure.
Okay.
Yeah, so
a small step.
It's a small step. It's similar to in other studies we saw. I think there are. If you look at cure research right now, you can divide it in 2 parts. One is on the acute HIV-infected people, and the other one is in people who have a long-standing HIV infection. The river trial I just discussed was in the second one. The acute HIV infection is interesting for me as a physician and as a researcher in terms of cure because of three reasons. One, if you find someone within 6 months of his acquisition of HIV, which is the acute HIV infection, then the reservoir, so the hiding place, is smaller. The second reason is that your immune system is more potent. And the third reason is what we just discussed, the transmittability. If you intervene during that period, the transmittability of the virus to another person who is still uninfected is less. So some data came out of studies from France and from Thailand, where they confirmed that there are more favorable characteristics in these people who have started treatment early. And now is the question, how can we get these people towards a cure? I think that's where that area of cure will go to. On the other hand, the people who were unfortunate enough to have their HIV diagnosed at a later stage, the next steps would be to look at combination therapy further, like combining vaccination with shock and kill agents in order to get this hiding place eradicated and get the field further.
Combination cure.
Well, if you want to call it that way,
yeah.
I would think it's. We should think of a good acronym for it. Yeah, a good word.
Good.
Yeah. I think as far as the Netherlands is concerned, we together with we're expanding a national network of acute HIV infections, where we help people who are at risk to get diagnosed early and retained in care as soon as possible. It's something we do together with one of the co-chairs here, with Peter Rijs, and other researchers, of course. But the goal is to make a national network, and I think, like I discussed earlier, this should also be ideally a global network. And on the other hand, we're also doing cure pilot trials, so very early trials on cure initiatives in potential cure initiatives, I should say, in more chronically infected patients.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. A round of applause. Wilma, the unique thing about the AIDS conference is that there are so many people living with HIV. That's really incomparable with other diseases. Maybe you have 10 patients in the last row, and on this conference, 15 or 20,000 people. I think it's 1/3 doctors and nurses, and 1/3 researchers, and 1/3 patients. Mm-hmm. So what is the role of and the importance of activism?
Oopsie. There is still a lot to do, Fred. Peter Rijs, co-chair of this Congress, he mentioned already, when we stop fighting against AIDS, the HIV epidemic will explode. So we achieve a lot. From 37 million people are living with HIV. 21 of them have access to medication. But there are still 17 million people who don't have access. So that is a lot. And most of the time, that are the key populations. The sex workers, men, sex with men, drug users. And they have limited access to the services because of stigma and discrimination. What I heard the last 3 days, we must look to the HIV epidemic not only from a medical perspective. We see the east of Europe, we see Central Asia. They are the leaders in the new infections. More than 1 million every year, and every year 100,000 new infections there. We see also in Africa the other adolescent girls and the young women are number 1 in the HIV new infections. So there's still a lot to do. And it's going about not the medical issue, it's going about gender inequity. It's going about socio-economic factors. It's going about education, poverty, and religion. So it all plays a role. Now we have the PrEP, we have the USU, treatment as prevention, all that kind of developments helps us to normalize living with HIV. But therefore we need political willingness. Does it have to stay on the agendas of the politics and of the media? Elton John was yesterday, he was on the Congress, and he said, we need here the fucking politicians and not celebrities like me. And I think that is true. We need the politicians to be here. I feel the last days, I feel the action, and I hear it, and I see all action. And I think we need it. The slogan of the march Monday was towards zero together. And we have to do it together for zero infections, zero discrimination, zero AIDS deaths. And we all have the right to have access to HIV medication. So we still need action.
Okay, that's clear. That's clear. Everybody gets an art bag from the AIDS funds when we leave tonight. And one of the items in the art bag is the magazine I Am Plus, I Am Positive. Elian, you've read the draft version of the magazine. I Am Plus inspires and informs HIV-positive people living with HIV so that they may live long and healthy lives. And I have the first copies to hand over to you. And we have a Dutch and an English version, so you can choose for the Dutch conference bag or the English conference bag. Yeah. And we have the copies here. So, may I hand you over the English version?
Great, thank you.
And the Dutch version. Also for you, the English version and the Dutch version. And for you, with our beautiful torchbearer, Carina. They can show it. Oh, maybe it's coming on screen. Elian, you've read the draft version. What did you think about it?
I think that this is very, very good. Actually, this has a lot of information that I hope all my patients will read it, and they will bring me a lot of more work when they visit me in the hospital, because this actually, it informs really well the patients. And I can only treat patients the best way if we really know a lot about each other. Because the medication is best individualized. Not everybody is the same. Not every treatment is the same and the best for everybody. So this actually, it really helps you with experience from other patients. It helps you put the right questions to the doctor and improve actually your life. So I think this is really something that is, in a very positive, but also giving real information that you can rely on and that you can discuss with. So I think it's, it will really help improve care for HIV people, I think, again. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for updating us, and have a good last conference day. Thank you. Thank you. And a beautiful heart for you as well. Dankjewel. Nee, dat hoeft niet. Doe eens zakjes. We're going to give it backstage. So, didn't want to be impolite. We're going to have a look at a film. Perry, we're going to have a song. We changed the mind. Perry Dossett is going to sing for us.
when the only sound in the empty street is the heavy tread of the heavy feet that belong to a lonesome cop. I open shop when the moon so long has been gazing down on the wayward ways of this wayward town, that her smile becomes a smirk. I go to work. Love for sale, appetizing young love for sale. Love that's fresh and still unspoiled, love that's only slightly soiled. Love for sale. Who will buy? Hey baby, how you doing? Who would like to sample my supply? You know you want it. Who's prepared to pay the price for a trip to paradise? Love for sale. Let the poets pipe of love in their childish way. I know every type of love better far than day. If you want the thrill of love, I've been through the mill of love. Old love, new love, every love but true love. Love for sale, appetizing young love for sale. If you want to buy my wares, follow me and climb the stairs. Oh, love for sale, yeah. Love for sale. Love for sale.
Hello everybody. My name is Leo Schenk and I've been living with HIV for 20 years now. I'm the editor-in-chief of Hello Gorgeous, a wonderful magazine. If I may say so myself. We just made a special AIDS 2018 edition together with the IAS and the Elton John AIDS Foundation. You'll find it in your goodie bag when you walk out this stage. But enough about me. I have two wonderful guests for you. And I'd like to welcome them. Let's give a warm welcome for Reina Foppe and Gerben Gribius. Reina and Gerben, you just walked the Positive Flame.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Well, no
a little
problem.
bit exhausted, but it was really intense, overwhelming, emotional. Yeah? Yes.
Are you still alive, Reina?
Yeah, very much.
Ready for some tough questions?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Bring them on.
You're working for the Dutch Association for People Living with HIV, and you're a powerhouse within our community.
Oh, thank you so much.
But that was not always the case.
No.
You've been living with HIV for 29 years now, and I want to go back to when you were a young woman of 25 and you heard your diagnosis. It was a different world we were living in than it's now. And after 5 years, you decided to tell your parents. Why then?
Yeah, I was 25. It's, of course, awful to tell your parents that you're going to die. I was the sixth in a large family, the last one. And I was supposed to be the son of their old age, you know. And then you're going to die. That's your diagnosis. My partner died, and in 1990, that was 2 years after my diagnosis. And I came back to the Netherlands, and then I felt really the urge to get more attention for women living with HIV. And I was asked to participate in a primetime television show.
Finger on the Pulse, was it called? Finger on the Pulse.
Finger on the Pulse. And it was a very beautiful program. After all, if you look at it, it's the two other. It was called Vrouwen en AIDS, Women and AIDS. The two other women died, and I'm still here.
Wow.
But because it was prime time, I had to tell my parents.
Yeah, women with HIV were very invisible in those years, eh?
Invisible,
and their needs
yes.
were not met by any at all. A famous slogan from that time was, "Women don't have AIDS; they just die from it."
Yeah.
Why were women so invisible at that time?
I think that in the Netherlands, it started really out as a gay disease. But then also you had a solidarity. Gay men were very well organized. And the same was with drug users. So intravenous drug users, they had also their organization. And they also advocated very much for harm reduction programs. The gay community did safe sex shows. But hey, women is just half of the population. We're just not organized. So if you don't let your voice be heard, then you don't exist. And we tried at least to get the women that we knew, to get them together. But it was always a small group. And we didn't shout hard enough, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And how is it now? Are you organized? And do you have a voice?
Well, we have a voice. Yeah, I think, of course, with the internet, it improved very much. But not everybody is born an activist. Mm-hmm. And that's also a fact. And we have a very nice community of women, but we are much too nice. Yeah. We should be shouting and fighting for our rights. And that's still difficult to achieve. I'm very glad that in this conference there's much more attention for women and girls, for access to healthcare. And I think it's really important. Yeah.
Let's go to Gerben for a while. Gerben, you're a singer, an actor, a dancer, and you're mostly known for your musical work. Am I correct?
Yes. Yeah.
You've been living with HIV for 5 years now, also 25 years later than when Rainer heard a diagnosis. And you waited a while until you told your parents.
Yeah,
Why
half a year.
Why was that?
Because it was shortly before the summer, and I thought, well, my parents, I don't want to give them more worries, sorrows, as they have already, maybe. And I thought, maybe they don't love me that much anymore if I'm going to tell them. So I think parents love their children most of the time unconditionally, and I thought maybe that's not the case anymore.
Yeah. You decided to tell your mother first.
Yeah.
How did she react?
She burst into tears, actually.
Of course.
She came to Amsterdam to visit me, and actually she knew that I had taken a risk, and she was actually asking me all the time, and how are you really doing? And I was keeping up the appearances, and I said like, oh, I'm totally fine. Till the point after the summer, she came again, and I said, well, sit down for a moment. We had a coffee, and of course she cried. But the first thing she said, you will be always the same for me. You will be the same Gerben as always.
Yeah. So you came out of the closet with your HIV at the beginning of this year, with a song about the conversation you had with your mother. What took you so long? 5 years after your diagnosis, you came out of the closet.
Well, actually, I had the idea already like last year, and I made a comedy show with a colleague of mine. But then by then the song was not finished, and we discussed it in our show. And even then, her sister-in-law after the show came to her and said like, "Oh well, you gave him a kiss on his mouth, but you said actually that he's HIV positive. So that's maybe not a good idea." So that was for me the reason still to make the song, and because I think I thought I can use my talent. There are songs made about political stuff, about love, but there is not a song about how it is to live with HIV. And I think, that was for me the reason to come out of the closet for the second time.
Mm-hmm. Always as a gay man with HIV, I think. You came out of the closet also because there's a lot of taboo surrounding HIV. Do you still encounter stigma and prejudice?
Oh yes, even I still live with my roommates, and of course they said like, oh, we can accept it, but maybe we should wash the towels separately. And even like a couple of weeks ago, I had to give blood like every 6 months, and the nurse said like, oh well, wait a minute, I'm gonna get my colleague. So she came back and she said, oh, can I ask you a question? Why did you get your colleague? Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't want to get your blood because I don't want to put myself in any danger.
Terrible, right?
Yeah, so, and the day after I recorded the song, and I said, well, that's for me, again, the reason I think, yeah, I should make this song.
There are just a few famous people in the Netherlands that are open about their status. Why do you think there are so few people who are known and entertainers are open about their status?
I think people are still afraid about their status, like their career. Maybe I also thought, okay, maybe it's going to change a little bit. Maybe people will not hire me anymore. Even when the song came out, colleagues called me and said like, well, this is really my story, but I don't trust myself to tell my story because I'm really afraid that I'm going to lose my job or I'm going to lose my career because I have this status at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Back to you, Raina. There was a time when you were active in the regional department of the association in Utrecht, but then it got quiet for a while because there were medications, there wasn't a need to see each other anymore. You went abroad on...
Yeah, that was life again.
Yeah.
You know, after the death sentence, we suddenly had a future.
But that also meant that you became a little bit silencer and invisible.
Well, yeah, because I had other things on my mind and everything went all right. And I thought, well, we have to change the world. So I started working in development cooperation.
Yeah, that's also important.
Yeah, it's also important, exactly. And I had the health to do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's the time that actually I had a professional career elsewhere. And yeah, I took my medication, that was it. And I went to my checkups.
So, and you're now one of the most active, visible women living with HIV in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
What was the tipping point when you became active again?
Well, I became a mother when I was 41. And I decided not to tell about my HIV, not to disclose as long as she was in primary school, to protect her. But this being silent about it, it really put me down. It felt somehow not well, you know. So mentally I was actually suffering from the fact that I couldn't be 100% myself. And then I was 50 and I had 25 years of HIV, and I got the invitation from Hello Gorgeous to participate in a very tiny thing. And that was the flipping point. Then I said, okay, if I have to live up to, I don't know, 85 or something, I don't want to continue to hide an essential part of me. Mm-hmm. I have nothing to hide anymore. And that was really a very healthy decision.
Yeah.
It also brought me to the job that I have now and that I really love. And I passionately fight stigma in the Netherlands and bring people together.
It's true, yeah. You're a community networker.
Yeah, I'm the outreach person. Come to me.
I think the Dutch community is nowadays much more diverse, much more visible than it was years ago.
Because it was diverse already, but now that's visible. More visible. Yeah.
How do you explain that, apart from your own rule? That of Hello Gorgeous.
Well, I do think that we worked a lot on visibility. And also to show diverse faces, not just 3 or 4 white people. Eliana has been very important in that. She was one of the first dark-skinned women that came out for HIV. She has been on the cover of Hello Gorgeous. People can relate to us much more than when you put 3 or 4 the same faces all the time. So I think we really made a huge step in showing much more faces. And I really thank you being here and showing your face that we have achieved that together, because I cannot do that on my own. Thank you very much. Applause for you.
Finally, some few questions more than before we go to the break. Gerben, you are very active now today and this week as an activist. How do you see your future?
Hopefully I can do more and to fight stigma and to make really people aware. I think also like this You Is You campaign is wonderful, because also a couple of days ago I spoke with someone and she thought like, yeah, but I would never want to have sex with someone who is HIV positive. And she didn't know, for example, if you are undetectable, you can't transmit the virus. So I think it's so important to, as you also say, to show ourselves and to speak up.
And to speak up, to speak up when we encounter stigma. When people discriminate us, when they do things that hurt us, just tell people.
Yeah.
You know, we have to show our face. We have to spread the word, really.
She's still feisty after all those years, eh? But how do you see the future, Reina? How do you see your future with HIV, living with HIV?
Well, I'm quite tired of living with HIV. I would really love to have a cure. Really, I'm tired of it. But until then, you know, I try to make sure that my surrounding supports me. Because taking your medication every day for, 60 years, it really requires a friendly environment. And that's why we have to fight stigma. And that's why we have to promote that people tell at least their surrounding about it. So that they can keep on taking their medication and they have a good outcome and a good future. So I try to give the good example, let's say.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your stories tonight. And let's go to the debate together. See you after the break. Bye-bye.
Welcome to the second part of The Power of Love. Good that you're all here. Thank you. Thank you. Princess Mabel van Oranje has been committed to freedom, justice and development for more than 20 years. She co-founded War Child Netherlands and Girls Not Brides, the worldwide partnership against child marriages. Princess Mabel joined the fight against HIV and AIDS since she started working for the Open Society Institute. She's kind of the ambassador of the Amsterdam dinner, the annual HIV fundraising dinner. Last Monday, she led very bravely the protest march towards Zero Together. And this afternoon, she participated, you've seen it, in the Positive Flame Tour. Princess Mabel van Oranje.
Good evening.
What an honor.
It's really nice to be here.
What an honor to have you here, and to have you here this afternoon at the Positive Flame Tour.
It was really wonderful to join the tour. It was just so touching to see all the flame bearers. I also there was a moment where I thought, this is what it's all about. You know, at the first stop, where there was the first exchange of flames, I thought we were hanging around a little too long, and I got this feeling like, let's walk. We don't have time to stand still. There's still so much work to be done. And luckily, we marched and we marched and we got there. So really good.
So great that you participated.
And it's lovely to join you all. I know that quite a few of you gather every year, and I had hoped to join you earlier in previous years, for a host of reasons, including trying to take care of, as a single mother of my 2 daughters. I couldn't, and so it's really nice to be here now with you. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Shall I take over from you?
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, why not?
I will kick me out.
Oh no,
the floor is yours.
Thank you. No, I'm really honored that this evening I'll be on stage with 3 people who are real heroes. Living heroes. And I'll actually ask them to join us. The first one is Peter Steele, who I think is one of the most impressive advocates in the AIDS movement that we know. So, Peter, please join. Thank you. And the second person who is joining us is Françoise Barsinouzi from France, who is the discoverer of the HIV virus and one of my heroes. And the third person is Timothy Brown, who is the first and so far only person who has been cured of HIV. Please join us. You can go there, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course.
Thank
Sorry.
So, Peter, if you don't mind, I'll start with you. And I believe the last time you were in Amsterdam was in 1992 at the previous International AIDS Conference here. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I've vacationed here since. But yeah, I was at the 92 conference, and they had a heat wave that week, just like this one. So what is it about the AIDS conferences here where we burn the place down, I guess?
It looks like it. Now, a lot has happened since then. I mean, in 1992, as you all very well know, HIV infection basically wasn't meant dying. Yeah. Now, HIV infection means that you can live healthily. And you played an absolutely critical role in helping that change to happen. And so we were going to watch a little film, a little clip of a documentary about the role that you've played.
We are in the middle of a plague. 40 million infected people is a plague.
AIDS is now the leading cause of death.
Demonstrators blocked access to buildings.
Coalition of gay groups came to shut down the FDA.
This government has the resources to deal with the AIDS epidemic, and they won't do it unless we force them.
We want everybody to join us. We are trying to arouse to anger and action.
Until we get our acts together, we are as good as dead.
I started to look for treatments to help save my life.
I wish they'd shut their mouths and get their mentality out of their crotches.
There was nothing coming out of our government's efforts.
But no, they march in the streets. They defy you.
I decided to become a full-time AIDS activist.
They all had to become scientists to some degree.
We can take a drug, your test tube, to the market in under 2 years. This total reluctance on your part is going to get you nowhere. It'll end up killing us.
The death rate just kept on climbing.
It became very clear that you weren't going to mess with these people.
I am going to fight them. My patients are going to fight them. And you're not that welcome.
We need our government to save our lives.
This isn't going to be cured for years and years and years. I'm going to die from this.
Someday, there will be a people alive on this earth who will hear the story that once there was a terrible disease and that a brave group of people stood up and fought, and in some cases died, so that others might live and be free.
Whoa. Peter, looking at this, first of all, it makes me very keen to go see the whole documentary. But I wonder, how was it at that time to be an activist?
Very different from today. We didn't know whether we'd live to see the fruits of our activism. We were desperate to find the first tools in this epidemic, drugs that could prolong our lives. Mm-hmm. And we had a government and a population in the US that didn't care that we were dying in greater and greater numbers. They were ignoring the crisis. Reagan didn't mention the word for 6 years. I watched all my friends dying on a monthly basis. We would have these incredible Monday night meetings with ACT UP with hundreds of queer New Yorkers packed into the community center, strategizing of how to turn the country around and make it face this epidemic and face this crisis and fight. We would start those meetings every week with announcing the name of one or more of our members who had died that week. So it felt like you were in a war. We felt like we were in the front line, and you didn't know whether you would be one of the ones that came home from that war.
And when you look at activism right now, then, I mean, as you said, the situation is very different. Do you feel the way that activism is being done now has also changed?
Radically.
Have we become too civilized?
No.
Thank God.
I've been raising hell this week. I don't know about the rest of it. I think everybody's been making waves. Today's AIDS activists, first off, we're a lot more diverse. We're international. We're connected. We definitely represent the communities that are affected. A lot of us are able to work in the field at AIDS service organizations. And we have the tools to actually save lives in real time. In this footage here, as I said, we didn't know whether we'd live to see the results of our activism. Today, if you become an activist and join with other activists on fighting to apply these tools, like we're doing in New York City or in San Francisco, you can radically lower HIV infections if you get the politicians to use those tools, get the programs going, and you can save lives in real time. That's an incredible feeling for a contemporary AIDS activist, to save lives while you're doing your work. You see the infection rate drop where you're doing your work. And we're seeing it in New York. We've had a 40% decrease in the last 5 years. Same thing in San Francisco and New York. We're having real problems with the red areas of the country, the Republican-controlled areas. And we're actually trying to get the federal government to launch a national PrEP access program. That's what I'm working on right now. And if we get that going, we will see huge drops of HIV infections in the US among gay men and other affected communities.
Thank you. And if you look back at all these years of activism, is there a moment you want to share where you felt really excited?
Excited?
Yeah.
Yes. There were many. One was in 1989 when we were fighting a battle against Burroughs Wellcome, the company that came out with the first AIDS drug, AZT. And they priced it at the most expensive drug in history. And we were fighting to force them to lower the price. And we had done various demonstrations, and they had ignored us, and we just kept upping the ante. And I had used to work before my diagnosis. I found out while I was a bond trader on Wall Street. So I worked in one of the most homophobic environments in the country, and I would hear I'd hear the word faggot every day at work and have to just stew about it. But I was able to design a demonstration where we snuck into the New York Stock Exchange before the opening bell, and we went up, we dressed like traders, and we had fake IDs, and we got in. And we brought our own cameras in as well. Two of our guys had small cameras, so we could take a picture of what we were doing. And we went up to this VIP balcony with the New York Stock Exchange banner behind us, and handcuffed ourselves to the banister and waited till 10 seconds before the opening bell, and then stood up and unfurled this big banner that said "Sell Welcome," the company. And we had these miniature marine foghorns, and we drowned out the opening bell, and the traders went rapid. They started throwing things, and they saying, "Die, faggots," and all this stuff. And we were looking down on them, and I was just smiling, because I knew, I said, tomorrow we're on the front page of the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, and you are our pawns, and we're going to win this thing. And when the cops eventually took us out of the exchange, ACT UP was outside in mass, hundreds of us, and we were being brought to the police van, and I was surrounded by this beautiful, organized, angry, powerful community. And right before I stepped into the van, I looked up at the 6th floor of JP Morgan, where I used to work, and they were all at the window. I just looked up and like,
and I bet that they changed security procedures at the stock exchange after that.
And 3 days later, Burroughs Wellcome lowered the price of AZT.
Wow. And when you look at, I mean, we're obviously all aging. When you look at the next generation of activists, what do you see, and what would you wish for them? What would you recommend to those who were not there in the early years, but who are now continuing to carry the flame?
Well, I got goosebumps when you asked that question, because there is a whole generation of younger AIDS activists now, and they really remind me of myself in that footage, that very young boy up there. They're angry. They're frustrated. They say, we have the tools to save our friends from prevent our friends from becoming positive, and why aren't we using that? And they're using all the tools that we developed all those years to push the right political buttons to make a difference. And they're doing it in very different ways. They have the internet, and they're creating their own models of activism, but they're fierce. They're beautiful, and they're empowered, and they're going to change the world.
Great. So. The conference here, AIDS 2018 in Amsterdam, what is one of the things that really strikes you, or what you have learned, or what is the one thing you would like to share with us about the conference so far?
Well, the heat wave. No, I mean, it was, the conference got off to an appropriately sober start, where we realized on a global perspective that we're stuck and backsliding, frankly. That most of the world think AIDS is over and the resources are drying up, and it's a very frustrating time. But then we've seen some good science come out. I just saw the diversity of this movement in full strength here in Amsterdam. I don't know if any of you have been to the conference center, but it's the Global Village, and all these beautiful communities from around the world are gathered, and we're all on the same page. That's the beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. Back then, AIDS activists were often fighting amongst ourselves, but today we know the path. We know how to really end this epidemic. So it's just about fighting together and making that happen, and working it until it's done.
And your hope for the future?
I'm 57. I never thought back in those days that I'd live to be this age. I never thought I'd live long enough to see a man cured from AIDS. I never thought I'd live to see a cure and a vaccine, and now I think I will. I've got a good 30 years in me, I think, and I think by sometime between 2020 and 2030, we're going to get a vaccine and a functional cure, at least, if not a sterilizing cure. And I'm going to be around to see that, and I can't wait.
And you're going to be around to continue to be an inspiration for many, many, many of us.
Thank you.
Can I please ask an applause for Peter? Françoise, as I said when I introduced you, you're a hero. I mean, you discovered the virus. but you were a friend of Joop.
That's right.
And I was wondering if you can just say a few words about what being here in Amsterdam at the conference that Joop fought so hard to bring to Amsterdam, what it does to you.
It's really moving for me to be in Amsterdam without Joop around at this conference. You know, I first met Joop. It was in the mid-90s. We were meeting at all the AIDS conference every year. We share a lot of value together. We share the idea to try to work together with the resource-limited setting. Joop started to work with Africa. He started then to work together with Southeast Asia. Really wanted to strengthen the capacity in resource-limited setting. He was strongly believing in very energetic generation of African scientists and also scientists from developing countries. Now, he did a lot of things in that area, by the way. And still today, I mean, there are programs going on, and the Farm Access Program, for example, that are still ongoing, and we think everywhere about Joop all over the world. He was a true visionary. He was really not only a wonderful human being with a lot of respect for the patients, but respect for life, respect for the dignity of humans.
Now, I'm quite curious to know, what were you like when you were a child, and what were your dreams?
It's a difficult question. It's a difficult question because I didn't know at all that I would become a scientist. I just was very, very interested by life in general. For example, when I was going to the country, I could spend hours to look at animals in the country. And so sometimes, you know, two animals, one was looking, not doing so well. So I was starting to think in my mind, what's going on compared to the other, which is running, what's going for this one. So this kind of, but I didn't know what that means, really. Until, you know, at school, I realized that I was very good in life science. So naturally, somehow, I went to the University of Science. But I very often said to the young people, I'm not a good example. I'm not a good example because after 2 years at university, I started to ask myself, are you in the right direction? So I decided to do something that I do not recommend the young people to do. I found out that I should find a lab who will accept me as a volunteer. This part is okay. However, I found one at Pasteur Institute, and very rapidly I was so excited. And I found out that was really what I wanted to do, and I was not going anymore at the university. So this is the bad part.
Well, you know, I had the luck of working a few years ago with Archbishop Tutu, who told me his secret of how to win a Nobel Prize. He said you have to do 3 things. You have to have very short legs, a very big nose, and a very short name. So now it sounds like there are also other ways to get a Nobel Prize, and it's basically don't finish your study. So
no, I finished my study.
Oh, you did in the end.
I finished my study, but without going at the university.
Oh, you did? Ah.
I finished my study. I made a PhD, and my exam, you know, everything was very simple. I was very successful in the exam without going to university, just going to university for the exam.
Okay, so anybody who wants to win a Nobel Prize, here is a second recipe in case you're looking for it. Now, can you share a little bit for when you discovered the virus, like what happened? I mean, how crazy did the world go? How crazy did your colleagues go? How did you feel? Did you go home and open a bottle of wine? I mean,
not at all. Not at all. First of all, it's a long process. You know, you isolate the virus, then you realize that this virus is a new virus, but you have to make the link really between the virus and the disease itself. So we certainly did not open a bottle and say, "Hurrah!" That was not the feeling. The feeling was we may have the virus which is causing this terrible disease. So we have to rush. Yeah. We have to rush and go as fast as possible because we knew that people were dying. We did not imagine at all at that time the magnitude of the epidemic, but we knew already that it was young people dying from this disease. We have to prove that this virus was the cause of the disease. We have to develop at the same time serological tests because that was an emergency for blood derivative, which was transmitting the virus. So it was really a rush, plus to characterize the virus at the same time. So our first reaction was a lot of pressure on our shoulder, and we have to do as fast as possible, and we have to mobilize others. Because we knew that as a small team, we will not be able to cover everything. So let's try to find others to work together with us. In France, but not only in France, we started to work with the CDC in the United States. We started to work with others all over the world. And I think it was really the start of what we call today the multidisciplinary science, really to provide tools and evidences for the benefit of the patient. Indeed, for me, it reminded me the vision of Louis Pasteur. I was at Pasteur. But I did not realize what Louis Pasteur has in mind until I started to work on HIV.
Wonderful, wonderful. Peter was mentioning there's been, interesting presentations at the conference now about some of the scientific developments. How do you feel about where we are and where we're going? Scientifically? Scientifically,
as Peter said, I mean, like him, I'm dreaming myself, I'm older than he is, but I'm dreaming myself to stay alive long enough to see a vaccine and to see a cure. That is really my dream. And I think, I don't know, I'm not so sure about vaccine, but to have what Peter called functional cure, what now we call durable remission, I really strongly believe that we will have within, don't ask me when, I don't know, but that I'm sure is possible, and the scientists will develop a strategy to have a durable remission, for sure. Vaccine, we are making progress. How long it will take, I don't know. But what I see also, I'm very optimistic because the scientist should always be optimistic, otherwise I should not be a scientist. So I'm very optimistic for a cure, I'm optimistic for a vaccine. On the other hand, when I see, the number and the epidemic, which is still there, and the growing epidemic in Eastern Europe and Central Asia, which is close from here, by the way. When I see also an increase of resistance to antiretroviral treatment in several countries in the world, I said to myself, I don't want to be alive and see a re-emergence of HIV. That will be unacceptable for people like me and for all the first generation of our community working on HIV. When I say the community, all of us, it's not possible. So the reason, like Peter, I said, please, we have to continue the fight all together, as we started really in the late 80s, early 90s. Really, we have to continue the fight. We have to work together, the scientists, the health professional globally, and of course the activists, because we know that is our strength.
So you described how once the virus was discovered, you were in too much of a hurry to open a bottle of wine. It sounds like you're still in a hurry. Do you ever have time to pause and have a glass of wine?
Yes. Yes, because that is important also to have a glass of wine with friends of our community, and we have good time all together, by the way.
Then last question, when you look at the conference here, apart from the whole what's happening on the scientific side, what are your impressions of having the conference back in Amsterdam?
I think it's very nice to have the conference back in Europe first.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a European person, so I think it's really very important to have the conference here in Amsterdam, in Europe. I feel, I was not in the conference in Amsterdam.
The first time?
The first one. Because it was the time that I thought that the conference were not in the same spirit of the very first conference that I was before in 1985, 1986 in Paris, 1987 in Washington, D.C. And I was not so happy with the changes in the conferences. So I stopped to go until I went to Durban.
2 years ago?
No. They immediately understood what I was saying. The conference in Durban, when all the community decided to go there to make pressure on the government and Mbeki in order to change, their mind regarding HIV infection in South Africa, in order for them to provide prevention treatment for the population in South Africa. So it's at that time that I decided, let's go again together. We must fight against this government and Mbeki. And we had the opportunity to have the help and the assistance of myself, a wonderful man, Nelson Mandela.
Yeah. Wonderful. I would like to ask for a big applause for Françoise, and thank you so much for Now, Timothy, I understand this is not your first Power of Love event, and I understand that at the first time you were here, you actually met Joep, and we have a little clip about that.
Cool.
Timothy Brown.
Joep Lange. Hey, you're pleased to meet you, Timothy.
Good to meet you, too.
Very special human being here.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Deze wijn is op dronk over 20 jaar.
Nou.
En ik geef hem aan je en je mag hem openmaken als er een genezing van HIV is. Denk je dat die open gaat?
Uiteindelijk wel.
Ja?
Ja. Je bedoelt binnen die 20 jaar?
Ja.
Ja, dat denk ik wel, ja.
Nou, ja. Dat is toch prachtig nieuws?
Ja. Beautiful.
Ja.
Ja.
Timothy, you've been free of HIV for 11 years. How's your health?
It's good. I just quit smoking completely. I was using a vaporizer and it fell in my pocket and I was getting into an Uber to get to the airport and it fell in my pocket and I just threw it in the garbage, which was right there.
Fantastic. Great.
Yeah.
That's a great way.
Hopefully
anybody who wants to quit smoking.
Hopefully it didn't catch the garbage on fire.
Now, you were living a healthy life with HIV. You got leukemia and then basically stem cell therapy and then all kind of miraculous things happened. And so you're the first person cured with HIV. I'm curious what that did with you mentally.
What did it do?
In terms of you were HIV positive. I bet you had to deal with the stigma that is so often around it. You might have felt like, what does this mean for the length of my life? And then you find yourself cured and you're not longer supposedly dealing with the stigma, and life perspectives might look differently again. How was that?
Well, when I first was diagnosed, I lived in Berlin. I had moved there from, I moved from Seattle to Barcelona, and then it ended up in Berlin. And I found Berlin to be a very open city, kind of like Amsterdam. And I felt very little stigma from people. In fact, I told my bosses, and I worked in a cafe, and I told my bosses and my coworkers, I told all of them that I had just tested positive for HIV. And in fact, I didn't tell my mother until she was going through breast cancer herself. So I figured she has her own problems. She doesn't need to hear mine. And yeah, so I didn't tell her for 2 years. I didn't, like I said, I didn't really feel that much stigma from the people I didn't run around the restaurant going, "Hey, I'm HIV positive. You want a drink?" I felt pretty comfortable in Berlin. I kind of went on with life. I had just finished preparing to study in Berlin, and I went to start university, and I just thought I'd continue to do things as I planned. And I didn't feel like I needed to stop. But one thing, the person that told me I should go get tested, he just tested positive for HIV. He said, "You know, we only have about 2 more years to live." And that was the reality at the time. It was 1995, before protease inhibitors came out in Europe. The only drug that was available was AZT. And that was actually killing people. And so I'm like, I don't want to take that. When my doctor suggested I go on treatment immediately, she said, "I'll give you a very small dose of it." And I started that and did pretty well for the first year, didn't really have major side effects. And then I lucked out that the next year protease inhibitors were available. And then I could take, after that I could take, when they started prescribing multi-drug therapies to people, I was able to take those. And I did very well on those. Lived the next 11 years pretty much great. My viral load, once that was available, went up to over 500. In fact, that was one of the reasons why they were willing to give me the stem cell transplant when that became necessary. Because
your CD4 went over 500.
Yeah, my CD4 count went over 500.
And so then once you were cured, how did that change you mentally, or?
Yes, it did change me. At first, I didn't really believe it. In fact, I didn't really believe it until the main doctor, Dr. Gerhard Hüter, who was actually a hematologist, and nobody really believed, like, a hematologist having nothing to do with HIV. Why would he be the person to come up with a cure for HIV? The New England Journal of Medicine rejected his paper twice, and then finally accepted it once. There was a meeting where a journalist from the Washington Post was there, and they did a story about me, this strange person who had a long-term remission, and then the New York Times picked it up, and then the New England Journal of Medicine came back and said, "Okay, we'll accept." They accepted, and they printed it. Once they printed it, I believed it.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
It took a very renowned medical journal, probably the Bible of medicine, to say I was cured for me to believe it.
That's amazing. And when you look at the future, are you worried you might ever get again infected? I mean, are you hopeful? I'm
immune to any virus that enters enters into the CD4 cell through the most common doorway, which is called CCR5. That's gone from my system. I don't have CCR5 anymore, and so I'm not worried about that. I was worried about something called CXCR4, X4 virus, and because of that, I'm on PrEP.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. When you look...
that blows my mind, by the way. The first guy cured
is on PrEP, yeah. It's beautiful. Now, when you look at the conference here in Amsterdam, what are your observations? How do you feel about it all?
I think this conference has been amazing. The first person that I went to the pre-conference things on cure, and then also U equals U, which is undetectable equals untransmittable. And Tony Fauci stressed that U equals U if U really is U, meaning that a person really has to be undetectable, otherwise they can transmit the disease or the virus. I heard somebody say today, I don't have a disease, I have a virus. And so we're not diseased people, or people with HIV are not diseased people, they have a virus. Yeah.
Mm. Now, one thing thank you, Timothy, for sharing your story. And could I ask for some applause for Timothy as well? Now, listening to the three of you, one of the things that comes back in my mind is this view that we can all make a difference.
Yeah.
And I remember one thing that Archbishop Tutu, who I mentioned earlier, actually taught me one day. He said, like, look, my child, you have to understand, if you want to have big change happen, and which is what we obviously all want to happen here when trying to end the epidemic, he said, you need a big wave of change. And then he looked and he said, and my child, never forget, a big wave is made of millions and millions of drops of water. Mm-hmm. And you are one, 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 and we can all be tiny drops that make that big wave. Mm-hmm. And it made me, listening to you, realize how grateful we all are that you are part of this wave. But I also wanted to acknowledge that in this room, there are many, many people with whom we're all in this wave. Some of you have been very active in the past, some of you are very active now, some young people who hopefully in the future will become very, very active. And I also realized that there are some people who have done a lot in the past, but their work was never acknowledged, and they were maybe sometimes even forgotten, and that's wrong, I think. And it's wrong because I think as long as we're not able to see people for who they are, and if we don't acknowledge the fact that everybody cannot just be a change maker, but actually can be a leader, we cannot really make progress, and we cannot really care for each other. And so what I wanted to do as we wrap up this part of the evening is that I want to acknowledge one such leader. And it's a woman who provided support to people living with HIV in the early years here in Amsterdam. Somebody who I think I never met yet. But this was in the time, obviously, when HIV was a death sentence. And the person is Margot van Nerven. Margot, ben je hier? There you go. Now let me explain. Margot was a care manager and a counselor to many, many, many. She was a supervisor to others, and for many people, a close, close friend. She listened and listened, and she was there when people needed her. And I'm asking you to join here, because I understand that you worked incredibly hard. Come, we'll go to the center of the stage. That's, I think, better. And that you worked incredibly hard in very intense times. And then you had to leave for health reasons, and because it was all just a lot. And so you've always stayed in touch with the community, but the community never had an opportunity to thank you properly. And so what I would like to do right now is celebrate your contribution by doing two things. First of all, three things. First of all, I'm going to give you a hug. Dank je. Voor alles wat je hebt gedaan.
Dank je.
And then I'm going to give you a small gift from some friends who asked me to give this to you. And I'm going to ask this crowd to give you the biggest hand in the world because you deserve it for everything you've done.
Thank you. You make me cry.
Natuurlijk.
Thank you very much. I can't say anything because I'm so moved by what I hear this last moments from you too. It reminds me on this moment a little bit of the soldiers with the white helms in Syria who escaped with help and also who stayed back. But the same courage and togetherness I feel here this evening. So thank you. Thank you all. Okay.
Margot, thank you so much. And with that, I almost managed to get a new pair of glasses and a present. That was... oh gee. I would like to thank the three of us for the change you have made, are making, and I'm sure will continue to be making. I would like to thank Margot for being such a wonderful person and for the thought that even though sometimes we have to wait a long time for being recognized for what we do, we all will get recognized one way or another in what we do in our lives. And I want to thank all of you for all you do, because we're all part of that wave. And I'm humbled and honored to be a tiny drop of water working with this wonderful wave. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your wonderful contribution. Thank you. Thank you all. See you later as torchbearers. So, what an impressive people we have who are making a difference. And now, Beauty with Brains, Dolly Bellefleur and pianist Kees van Zandwijk. Please give her a round of applause.
Feels like fire. I'm so in love with you. Dreams are like angels, they keep bad at bay. Love is the light, scaring darkness away. I'm so in love with you, birch the soul. Make love your goal. The power of love, a force from above, cleaning my soul. Flame unburned desire, love with tongues of fire, purge the soul. Make love your goal. I'll protect you from the hooded claw, keep the vampires from your door. When the chips are down, I'll be around with my undying, death-defying love for you. Envy will hurt itself. Let yourself be beautiful, sparkling love flowers and pearls and pretty girls. Love is like an energy rushing inside of me. The power of love, a force from above, cleaning my soul. Flame on burn desire, love with tongues of fire, purge the soul. Make love your goal. This time we'll go sublime, lovers entwined, divine, divine. Love is danger, love is pleasure, love is pure, the only treasure. I'm so in love with you, purge the soul. Make love your goal. The power of love, a force from above, cleaning my soul. The power of love, a force from above, a skyscraping dove, flame on burn desire, love with tongues of fire, purge the soul, make love your goal.
It's not a question if we find a cure, but when we find a cure.
Cut, and then the virus is gone.
I'm convinced we'll find a cure in my lifetime.
Previously, they were seen as strange. Scientists who do research on a cure for HIV. It was considered a bridge too far. But they're not so weird anymore, because new insights are taking us ever closer to an HIV cure. This film shows how far Dutch research in this field has progressed.
We want to make HIV history.
For almost everyone living with HIV, no matter where in the world, a cure matters greatly.
If you would be cured from HIV, you would also be cured from, let's say, the judgment that people might have, or the questioning, or the explanation that you have to do.
Yeah, the first thing that pops up in my mind is also the stigma that you don't have to deal with. And for example, in my case, when I'm dating with guys, it can still be a problem for, many people. And that's something that sometimes also hurts me.
If I'm with a man and I will tell him, okay, by the way, I have to tell you I have HIV. Most of the men don't like that.
En dan, artsen hielden het voor onmogelijk.
genezen van HIV en toch is het bij 1 patiënt gebeurd. De Amerikaan Timothy Brown kreeg naast zijn HIV-infectie ook leukemie. En de arts die hem daarvoor behandelde bedacht een manier om ook zijn HIV te genezen.
Now, 11 years on, Timothy Brown remains the only person who's ever been cured of HIV.
The way Timothy Brown was cured was through a very aggressive therapy, which we normally reserve for patients that have cancer.
But Timothy Brown's treatment was risky. Ever since, researchers have been searching for a safe way to cure HIV, in the Netherlands as well.
We work together with scientists, with NGOs, with networks of people living with HIV, with the government. And I think very often in the world, only the medical approach is used.
Curing HIV is complicated because the virus is a troublemaker.
We see a lot of HIV in the blood of the patient, but as soon if the therapy is introduced, somebody feels much better, and we do not really measure the HIV anymore in the blood. But HIV is still present in many cells in the body, and that's what we call the reservoir, those cells harboring HIV.
Despite treatment, the virus remains dormant in the cells, hiding. And when the medication stops, the virus wakes up.
We don't really know a lot about these cells. And if we learn more about where these cells particularly are, we can also effectively target these cells.
That's why in the Netherlands, wide-ranging research programs are being done to find out where the dormant virus is hiding. One of the studies at UMC Utrecht is a post-mortem project.
You try to investigate bodies of people living with HIV very soon after death. And in that way, you can really be quite invasive and go hunting for the reservoir. We know that HIV can hide in different tissues, for instance in the gut or in lymph nodes, also in the brain.
And then the question, not unimportant, is how can the therapy be adjusted or made such that we reach all these cells in these different organs?
A better understanding of the dormant virus would mean an important step towards an HIV cure. And that's what a lot of people living with HIV are dreaming of.
I wanted to immigrate to Ghana, but with my HIV, it's difficult because of the medicine. So if I'm cured, my dream would become true. And you?
It's part of my identity. I would have to get used to it.
Does it mean you don't want to be cured?
Oh, no, no doubt. I do want to be cured. If there is a safe way of getting cured, then I wouldn't doubt.
Erasmus Medical Center in Rotterdam is also carrying out several studies into an HIV cure.
In the laboratory, we are testing compounds that can activate the virus. If you can activate the virus, the immune system can then clear it, and that would be ideal because then the patient could stop with all his medicine and would be totally cured. We have that organized, and we actually identified some compounds already, and we're currently doing clinical research in patients to find out whether they also work in patients.
Research into a cure for HIV is not only done in hospitals. A pharmaceutical company is also working on it.
I've been in this field of HIV research since '89, and I've seen the horrible effects of the virus on people, and that's still going on, right? So being part of a team that can deliver a protective HIV vaccine, yeah, that's beyond my dreams.
Besides developing a vaccine for people who live with HIV, Hanneke and her team are also working on a vaccine to prevent HIV infection.
What we try to achieve is that we give very small pieces of HIV to healthy people. This is completely harmless, but the immune system is triggered to make a response. And at the time that people would then encounter the real virus, there is a memory of the immune response that will immediately kick in and avoid the virus from spreading through the body.
Because the laboratory results were promising, the vaccines are now being tested on humans.
We have our preventive vaccine in clinical trials in Southern Africa in 2,600 women. And we are very curious to hear the first results from that study.
Hi. A more futuristic method of curing HIV is gene therapy. This is something that the AMC in Amsterdam is working on.
HIV is the only virus that deposits its genetic material into that of the human body. Other viruses don't do that.
And that's why they're working with the CRISPR-Cas system. It inactivates HIV DNA that's hiding in the human DNA.
We started using it and it immediately paid off. Let's have a look how such a CRISPR-Cas experiment could have looked like.
The experiment was done with human cells that had been infected with the HIV virus. In these cells, the CRISPR-Cas technology did the job.
It consists of an enzyme that can cleave the DNA, and then you need a guide RNA to bring the enzyme exclusively to the places where HIV DNA is sitting. Because that's where you want to cleave. You don't want to cleave any of the other human DNA.
After 4 weeks, there was no active HIV DNA in the cells anymore. This had never been seen before.
We realized that we actually had been able to reach the cure in that plastic flask, and that for us was amazing.
But does this mean that the method is suitable for humans?
We know very little at this moment of the side effects of such a CRISPR-Cas treatment. It's possible that CRISPR-Cas also sometimes cleaves not in HIV DNA, but our DNA. That's not what we want. I am optimistic, as always, but it will still be a very difficult route to reach the cure.
Life without HIV is life without HIV medication. This is hard to imagine.
Last week, I had 2 consecutive days that I forgot to take my medication. But to be liberated from that, you know?
Yeah.
How wonderful would that be?
It's so cute.
When you're weary, feeling small, when tears are in your eyes, I will dry them all. I'm on your side. When times get rough and friends just can't be found, like a bridge over troubled water, I will lay me down like a bridge over troubled water. I will lay me down. When you're down and out, when you're on the streets, when evening falls so hard, I will comfort you. I play your part when darkness falls and pain is all around, like a bridge over troubled water. I will lay me down like a bridge over troubled water. I will lay me down. silver girl, sail on by. Your time has come to shine. All your dreams are on their way. See how they shine. Oh, if you need a friend, I'm sailing right behind, like a bridge over troubled water. I will ease your mind, like a bridge over troubled water. I will ease your mind. I will ease your mind.
I said to myself many years ago that no one will silence me when I'm fighting this epidemic. I said I will speak, and I will speak, and I will speak, and I've been speaking since then.
Aber ich bin froh, dass es dich gibt.
Ich bin auch froh, dass wir uns beide haben.
I'm HIV. My wife was taking it with full hands, 2 hands, accepting.
Ik denk dat het makkelijker zou zijn voor mensen als ik, die geïnfecteerd zijn, om het met iemand te delen.
I'm an activist and I will do things so long I can do.
I've had a strong development from heart to work under HIV so that I can fight stigma and discrimination in our country, because that's something that is of high rate.
When people know about this, all the people now will be running away from me, because I can't just tell everyone that I'm HIV positive.
So like to tell you guys right now, it's like a really big relief from me.
Ja, het moment dat we dus te horen kregen dat Kevin HIV had, hadden we eigenlijk al direct gevraagd van, kunnen we zwanger worden? Dus ja, dat was al bekend bij de artsen, maar ik wilde toch echt wel 100% zekerheid van, ja, krijg ik dat kindje wel gezond?
Yeah, beautiful film. All the torchbearers. Before we go to the final of the program, I want to thank people for making the positive flame and the power of love possible. I want to thank you for your patience. I want to thank all the torchbearers, your heroes of making HIV visible in the city, in the world. For the Positive Flame Tour and for the program tonight, dozens of volunteers work to make everything happen here in the theater and all around in the city. I would like to mention one in particular, Hans Verhoeven. Without your decisiveness, experience and network, the Positive Flame Tour would have never been possible. Big round of applause for Hans. I want to thank all the organizations that organized a Positive Flame meet and greet, and everyone who has made a contribution on stage. In particular, I would like to mention Elian, Wilma and Casper, who provided the medical updates that they went to the conference to us, and Leo Schenk and Princess Mabel for the interviews. I'd like to thank our cooperation partners and sponsors, the Dutch Association of People Living with HIV, de HIV-vereniging, AIDS Fonds, AIDS 2018 and the City of Amsterdam. And in particularly, I would like to mention the commitment of Roy Vinke, who has, on behalf of the municipality, embraced the Positive Flame and given wings to this project. Roy, thank you so much. It wouldn't be possible without our sponsors, Gilead, Viv, Janssen, MSD, GameState, Lloyd Hotel, MPN Printers. Thank you. And last but not least, my colleagues from Vollemaan, who worked so hard for this.
Even more important, my dear colleague Fred. Fred, you worked for, now I can say, hundreds of hours the last weeks and months, the idea of the Positive Flame. I know you didn't sleep a lot last nights, and I really appreciate, and please people, give him a big hug from the audience, a big hand from the audience.
Thank you.
Standing ovation, Fred Verhoeven.
Dank je wel. Dank je wel. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And now, it's time for the grand finale. Is that the English way of pronouncing? I don't know. It's time to say goodbye, and it's time to hand over the positive torch to AIDS 2018. Peter Rijs is the Dutch co-chair of AIDS 2018, and he will light the torch with the Positive Flame. And tomorrow morning at 9:30, he will ignite the Positive Flame, which has been moved to the Global Village in the Rai. And on Friday, the Positive Flame will burn at the closing ceremony in the Rai. And then the torch will be handed over to representatives of AIDS 2020 in San Francisco. So the Positive Flame will burn in 2 years in San Francisco. Perry Dossett and musicians will meet again.
Okay, we're going to be performing We'll Meet Again, but we're not going to do that alone. We want to ask you to sing along. I want you all to stand up. Please stand up. Look at your neighbor, give your neighbor a hand or a hug, because you've been in each other's aura all day, all night. Just a big hug. and sing along with us. We'll Meet Again by Vera Lynn. Here it comes. We'll meet again. Don't know where, don't know when, but I'll know we'll meet again some sunny day. Keep smiling through, just like you always do, till the blue skies drive the dark clouds far away. So will you please say hello to the folks that I know? Tell them I won't be long. They'll be happy to know that as you saw me go, I was singing this song. We'll meet again, come on. I love you. But I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Keep smiling through, just like you always do, till the blue sky drive the dark clouds far away. One more time, the bridge. So will you please say hello to the folks that I know? Tell them I won't be long. They'll be happy to know that as you saw me go, I was singing this song. Come on. But I'll know we'll meet again some sunny day. Get home safely. Thank you. Thank you. Ja.